My name is Birju Pandya, and I work in the world of gift culture as it relates to finance, money, and business. Gift culture is, although it may sound new, it's not new from anthropological understanding. It is the engagement of people between one another in an unconditional way, moving away from a transaction-based approach to relationship to a trust-based approach. And I have been playing around with ways of incorporating that into my own life and offering it to groups that I work with for about 10 years now. At a high level, one is my volunteer work with a group called Service Space that has about a dozen projects that are geared towards offering broader society tools of inspiration, and all of that is offered in the spirit of gift, which is to say that it's offered no strings attached. And over the last 6 or so years, I've been working in the field of impact investing, which is the money side behind social entrepreneurship. So those who are doing social businesses, they need money from somewhere. The impact investors are where it comes from. And my intention in that field is to invite in more of a movement towards gift culture. One way of thinking about innovation is this conventional definition driven by, call it technology or technological progress. In that domain, I've seen more and more people coming from a space of non-transactionality, be it through the open source movement and Linux and what's going on there, to traditional for-profit businesses who are driven more by purpose. When I think about what Tesla did in releasing all of their patents to be used by manufacturers that aren't them, they have redefined what success is from shareholder value to as many people need to benefit as quickly as possible for the world to be shifting. And our push is to say, well, how can we keep on growing that boundary? Not just saying, okay, now we've done it, check the box, versus let's keep pushing, let's keep pushing. Another definition that I feel resonant with is not necessarily technological progress, but inner progress. To be able to start seeing the world with new eyes and to start to see that, as the new sciences are pointing out, that we're not as separate from each other as we may like to think that we are. And the experiments that organizations and people are taking part in across the world right now to see that. So there's a growing movement of people who are living a life that is more based on voluntary simplicity now, inviting in ways of living that are more connected to the earth, more connected to their community members, more connected to their own inner nature, call it practices of gratitude or compassion, or this word mindfulness has become quite a buzzword recently. All of these things are scientifically understood, and more people are starting to practice them. I find that there's tremendous opportunities for bringing non-transactional approaches to all of these things. I'm not as familiar with the world of academia. My understanding is that the impetus behind so much of the original thrust of academia was, in effect, information being free. I mean, we're all here to share it with each other. What I have seen more recently, and this may be more due to me being based in the Silicon Valley, is how the nature of research is starting to skew and bend to the will of the capitalist paradigm that we're a part of. And so much of the research happening seems to be driven by monetization. And I think that's where there's this opportunity to say, who is out there that is building architectures, infrastructures that are fundamentally geared towards relationship and non-transactionality. And we see this in the technological world. That's where I have a little bit more insight being in the place of the world that I am. For instance, the development of blockchain technology. This is inherently moving away from what you would call monetization. It was built out of a university kind of a mindset. And yet here we are saying it's because it's decentralized by nature in terms of its structure. Turning it into a private company doesn't really work. There's no profitability to be made out of it, and it's born out of a different way of thinking. I hope so. What I have seen in giftivism or gift culture is the invitation for a person to rewire their own mind. And we see this. I mean, there's research out there showing that as we practice small elements of abundance in our own life, trying to figure out ways to bring that sense in, we see the part of the brain that's responsible for the fight or flight mechanism, the amygdala, actually shrinks in size physically in a very tangible way. You know, the part of the mind that's able to focus on reflection, taking a step back, executive action, that starts to grow. And so we start to see, from my perspective, if we want a society that is able to keep from these systemic collapses in the global world from happening, so much of it is due to rewiring ourselves through trying to live in a different system, even though, of course, we don't live in that system today. I'll speak for myself that within me there is resistance, right? So again, if we go to the neurological underpinnings, what I have done is I have built a neurological superhighway in my brain that is rewarding me for behaviors that are necessarily causing harm in the world and in myself. And so if I choose to build a new pathway, my brain will say, I don't want this. This is hard. Learning a new habit, especially when I don't need to, my survival, immediate survival, is not on the table. I shouldn't have to do this. And so I see it in myself, and then certainly I'm not surprised when I see it in culture and in systems. I do find that as I start walking down the path, the benefits that come to me from engaging in this, right? So I have chosen in certain parts of my life to not try to maximize my own financial gain. And on one level, you could say, well, I should be less happy because that's the narrative that has been told to me. What I have seen is I'm actually more happy. And what I have discovered is that there are many sources of capital that I was not tracking previously that I'm now starting to grasp as my own neurology starts to shift, recognizing that it's a many-step process, but even one step along the process has shown me that. So from my perspective, while there may be resistance, I have seen that as people start walking, as we create conditions for practice, it may create the conditions for a broader shift. I would say broadly, there are forms of capital that are material and some that are a bit less tangible. So I would put one dimension in that way. I'd put another dimension that says there are forms of capital that are inherently degrading to society. The more you use them, you'd call them not sustainable. And then on the other end of that spectrum is forms of capital that are fundamentally regenerative, meaning the more you use it, the more you have. So for instance, something that is fundamentally degrading is something that's connected to the monetary system. The reason is that it demands infinite growth when we live in a world that doesn't have infinite growth. A tree doesn't grow forever, and yet the monetary system demands that it does. So on one side, eventually you'll cut down all your trees if you operate in that world. On the other side, let's talk about something like attention. If I grow my capacity to attend, to give you attention, you don't lose attention. I get more capacity to get attention. I end up happier because I'm able to pay attention. And all of this is a form of wealth that is completely lost on me when I don't care about it, when I'm unable to live it. When we talk about the invisible hand of markets, and that's really what we're trying to talk about here, that the systems and societies that we take for granted today didn't even exist 60 years ago. We have perverted the words of Adam Smith when he said the invisible hand guides the market, the invisible hand of self-interest. And when we say self-interest, it has now been taken to mean greed. And so now on one hand, we're saying greed is what creates progress. And on the other hand, every bit of neurological understanding that we see shows greed inhibits growth from the inside out. And so reconciling that is where gift culture has emerged.